AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay at my apartment after he caused chaos at my family's wedding. This all started last month when my cousin, let's call him Jake, announced he was moving to my city. Jake and I have always had a weird dynamic. We grew up together, but he's the kind of person who thrives on drama and seems to think the world owes him something. Despite that, when he told me he didn't have a place yet and asked if he could crash at my apartment for a couple of weeks while he got settled, I hesitated but eventually said yes. My apartment isn't huge. It's a one-bedroom, but I figured I could tolerate him temporarily if it was only for a short period. Things immediately started going downhill. Jake has zero awareness of boundaries, which I had mostly forgotten until he started treating my apartment like it was a hotel. He would leave dishes everywhere, eat all of my groceries without asking, and borrow my clothes and gadgets without permission. I tried to be patient at first, thinking it was just the stress of moving, but it quickly became unbearable. I worked from home, and he would invite random friends over without asking, sometimes staying until 3 or 4 in the morning. When I politely asked him to at least give me a heads up, he acted offended, saying I was being controlling. I wanted to give him another chance, but the tipping point came during my younger sister's wedding. Jake had been invited like everyone else, but instead of helping, he spent the entire event insulting the catering, openly criticizing my sister's dress, and somehow started a fight with my uncle over a parking spot. By the time the reception ended, my parents were fuming, my sister was crying, and my extended family was whispering about how inappropriate he was being. I was mortified and felt personally responsible for letting him stay with me in the first place. After the wedding, I told Jake he needed to find his own place immediately. I gave him a strict deadline, 3 days. I even offered to help him look for affordable options, but he refused, claiming he couldn't afford rent right now and that I was being selfish. He started texting me nonstop, guilt-tripping me with things like, "I've always been family, and you can't just kick me out," and even threatened to make everyone in the family choose sides if I didn't let him stay. He stood firm. I reminded him that staying in my apartment was never meant to be permanent, that he had violated my trust and my space, and that the wedding incident proved he couldn't handle himself responsibly. The day before his deadline, he showed up at my apartment with a suitcase, expecting me to let him in. I refused, and he left angrily, saying he would call my parents to tell them what I did. I didn't hear from him for a few days, and I assumed he had either found somewhere else or calmed down. Then things got worse. My parents called me, furious that I had refused to help Jake. Apparently, he had texted them, exaggerating the situation, saying I abandoned him, and that I was being cruel for not letting him stay. My parents seemed to think I was the bad guy here, and I ended up in a long, tense conversation defending myself. I tried to explain that I had been more than generous, that he created chaos at the wedding, and that I couldn't have him living in my apartment any longer without it seriously affecting my life. My parents eventually told me I should be nicer and maybe let him stay a little longer until he figured things out. I told them no. I was done. I've already had to replace things he broke, clean up after him constantly, and endure nonstop stress because of his behavior. A few family members are on my side, but others think I'm overreacting and that family should stick together. Jake hasn't tried to reconcile with me, but he has told some relatives that I ostracized him. Now, I'm stuck in this awkward situation where my family is divided. My relationship with Jake is basically destroyed, and I can't shake the guilt some relatives have made me feel. I honestly feel like I did the right thing by prioritizing my own space and mental health, but part of me worries that maybe I was too harsh and could have handled it differently. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay at my apartment after he caused chaos at my family's wedding. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she criticized my parenting. I, 34F, have always been close with my family, but things have started to get really tense lately. I have a 6-year-old son, Liam, and my sister, Jessica, 31F, is getting married in a few months. She's always been kind of high maintenance, but I never thought it would come to this level of conflict. About a year ago, I started feeling a bit of pressure from Jessica. She has a very particular vision for her wedding: luxury venue, expensive dress, huge guest list. She told me that she expected all immediate family to contribute financially if they could, but didn't outright demand anything. I could afford a little bit, but I'm not in the financial position to cover major expenses, especially after putting a lot into Liam's school and extracurriculars. Everything was fine until a few months ago. Jessica and I were having lunch, and she started giving me parenting advice, criticizing things like how I discipline Liam and the meals I make for him. She said that if I spent less money on toys and convenience foods and put more effort into his manners, maybe I'd be more present for family events. I try to laugh it off, but I felt really attacked. I've been a single mom since Liam was 2, and I work full-time and juggle everything on my own. Her comments hit a nerve. After that conversation, I felt a lot less inclined to participate in the wedding financially. I also noticed she was subtly guilting other family members, saying things like, "I guess not everyone cares enough to help make this day special." I decided I would attend the wedding and help with small things like setup and decoration if I could, but I was done contributing money toward it. I told her this privately, and she completely lost it. She called me selfish and ungrateful, saying that I couldn't possibly think she should fund her own wedding entirely. She also said that my refusal was punishment for her criticism, which, honestly, it kind of was, but I didn't see it as personal revenge. I just don't think anyone should have to pay for someone else's dream day, especially when they're being judged on their parenting. I told her I'd happily help in other ways, and that Liam could help with crafts for the wedding if she wanted, but she didn't respond positively. My parents are involved as well. They're on Jessica's side to some extent. My mom called me and said that my lack of contribution was shameful and that I was letting family obligations slide because of petty disagreements. My dad was a little more understanding, saying he thought the wedding planning stress might be making Jessica overreact, but he also implied I should step up. I've since had some tense exchanges with Jessica. She has stopped speaking to me much outside of mandatory wedding planning calls. She's also threatened to cut me out of some parts of the ceremony, like the rehearsal dinner, because of my refusal to contribute financially. I feel like this is completely unreasonable. I'm not trying to hurt her. I just don't want to be guilted into spending money I can't afford, especially when it feels like she's attacking my family choices. Some extended family members have started asking me about the situation, and I've been honest that I'm attending but not funding anything. Most of them have been supportive, saying it's fair, but a few have said I'm being dramatic and should just pay to keep the peace. I feel trapped because if I pay, I'd be resentful, and if I don't, I'm being seen as the villain. I love my sister, and I want her wedding to be amazing, but I also have to prioritize my son and my financial stability. I tried explaining that, but she keeps framing it as a personal attack. I can't shake the feeling that if she really cared about family, she wouldn't try to manipulate people into paying for her wedding while criticizing them. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to financially contribute to my sister's wedding after she criticized my parenting, even though I'm attending and helping in other ways. The tension has been building for months, and I keep second-guessing myself. But I really don't see why I should pay to make her day perfect when I'm also being personally attacked and judged. I'm trying to do the right thing in a way that works for my family, but it's starting to feel like I'll never be in her good graces again. I know weddings are emotional and expensive, but it feels like the line between asking for help and guilt-tripping has been crossed, and I don't want to compromise my principles or my budget because of it. The situation has caused a lot of arguments, and I'm exhausted. I genuinely want to celebrate with her without feeling like I'm being punished for having a life that doesn't revolve around her wedding. I'm hoping for some perspective on whether my stance is unreasonable or if I'm justified in setting this boundary. If you want, I can also create 2 to 3 more original long AITA stories in this same style with similar popularity potential. This one alone is about 6,200 characters, so if it fits your request. Do you want me to make the additional stories too? AITA for refusing to let my younger brother stay with me after he caused a huge mess in my life last year? So, some background first. I, 25F, live in a small city, and I've been renting a one-bedroom apartment on my own for the past 2 years. I work in marketing, and while my job isn't crazy high-paying, I've managed to live comfortably and save some money. My younger brother, Kyle, 22M, has always been a bit reckless. He has a history of making impulsive decisions, and my parents tend to shield him from consequences, which has only made things worse. About a year ago, Kyle had a major crisis. He lost his job, got into some trouble with the law for underage drinking, and ended up getting evicted from his apartment. Our parents offered to let him stay with them, but their house is tiny and they were already dealing with my older sister's kids, so they asked me if he could stay with me temporarily until he got back on his feet. I hesitated, but eventually said yes, thinking it would be for a month or two at most. The first week was manageable. Kyle was polite, tried to clean up after himself, and even applied to a few jobs. But then things started to unravel. He began leaving his laundry in the living room, eating all my food without asking, and staying up super late playing video games. I'm someone who works mornings, and he made no effort to adjust his schedule. I started noticing small things missing from my apartment, things like headphones, chargers, and kitchen utensils. At first, I didn't think much of it, assuming he misplaced them, but over time it became obvious he was taking them and not returning them. I tried talking to him multiple times, reminding him that this was my apartment and he needed to respect my space and belongings. He would apologize, promise to do better, but then nothing changed. The tipping point came about 2 months in. I had saved up for a trip I'd been planning for months, a solo weekend getaway to a cabin. Kyle knew about it, and the night before I was supposed to leave, he told me that he had invited some friends over to hang out and celebrate, and that I shouldn't worry. He would clean up. I explicitly told him no parties in my apartment, but he insisted it would be fine. When I got back from my trip, the apartment was a disaster. There were empty beer cans everywhere, my furniture was scratched, some of my kitchenware was broken, and there was a huge stain on my carpet that wasn't there before. I was furious. I called Kyle, and he acted like it wasn't a big deal, saying I was overreacting and that he had a good time with his friends. I ended up calling my parents for support, and they were sympathetic but said it was my responsibility to enforce boundaries. I had to spend an entire weekend cleaning up the mess, and I ended up throwing out several things that couldn't be salvaged. After that, I told Kyle that he could no longer stay with me. He tried guilt-tripping me, saying I was being a bad sister and that he had nowhere else to go. My parents even called me, asking if I could just give him another chance because he was struggling. I told them that I loved my brother, but I couldn't let him continue to treat me and my home that way. I suggested he look for roommates or temporary housing elsewhere. Kyle hasn't spoken to me much since then, but last week he texted me asking if he could crash at my place for a few nights because he got evicted again. I immediately said no. He responded with a long message accusing me of being selfish and not supporting family. He said he didn't expect me to be perfect, just to be there when he needed me, and that I was choosing my apartment over family. I feel like I'm in the right here because he's had multiple chances and keeps repeating the same behavior. I also feel like my apartment is my sanctuary, and it's reasonable to enforce rules and boundaries. But I can't help feeling guilty because he's my brother, and he really doesn't have many options right now. My parents are pressuring me again, saying I should compromise for family, and that I'm overreacting. I just don't want another disaster in my apartment, and I don't think I should be responsible for his life choices, especially after the way he treated me last time. But now I'm starting to doubt myself because everyone around me is framing me as the villain for not helping him. So Reddit. AITA for refusing to let my brother stay with me again after everything that happened last year. AITA for refusing to give my brother my late father's watch after he accused me of being selfish and disrespectful. I, 33F, have a younger brother, Daniel, 30M. Growing up, our relationship was complicated. We were close at times, but Daniel has always been more impulsive, dramatic, and prone to expecting things from others. I've always been careful with money and possessions, and I tend to plan ahead. Our parents passed away a few years ago, and dealing with their estate was already emotionally draining. A few weeks ago, Daniel brought up the topic of our father's belongings, specifically my father's vintage Rolex watch. He said he deserved it because he was the youngest and spent more time with Dad during his final years. I told him that the watch had significant sentimental value to me, as my father had given it to me after I graduated college, and I wanted to keep it. I also reminded him that we had already divided most of the estate fairly, and I had given him other items that I thought were meaningful to him. Daniel's reaction was immediate and intense. He accused me of being selfish, greedy, and disrespectful to both him and Dad. He said that by keeping the watch, I was disregarding our father's love for him and implying that I valued material things over family. I tried to explain that it wasn't about money. It was about memory and sentimental attachment, but he refused to listen. Over the next few days, the pressure escalated. Daniel sent me long messages about how unfair I was being and how families should support each other rather than fight over belongings. He also brought up past disagreements, using them as evidence that I was always putting myself first. Mutual relatives weighed in as well. Some thought I should give him the watch to avoid conflict, while others agreed that I had a right to keep something that was important to me. Things got worse when he showed up at my apartment unannounced. He demanded to see the watch, insisting that I hand it over immediately. I calmly explained that it wasn't happening and that showing up without notice was inappropriate. He began yelling, saying I was ruining the family bond and claiming I was letting Dad down by not giving it to him. I offered a compromise. I could allow him to borrow it for special occasions or events, but ownership would remain with me. He refused, saying that wasn't good enough and that I was being manipulative and cruel. Since then, our relationship has been tense. He rarely speaks to me except to make passive-aggressive remarks, and some family members have subtly pressured me to give in to restore peace. Friends are divided. Some say I should just hand over the watch to avoid drama, while others say I'm right to protect something meaningful to me. I feel stressed, guilty, and conflicted. I want to honor my father's memory, but I also feel like I'm being attacked for having boundaries and valuing my own connection with him. I worry that giving in would set a precedent, where Daniel might expect to claim other items or push me into decisions that I'm uncomfortable with. I also feel that he's conflating sentimental value with monetary worth and trying to manipulate the situation by appealing to guilt. At the same time, I don't want to permanently damage our relationship over an object, no matter how meaningful. Reddit. AITA for refusing to give my brother my late father's watch after he accused me of being selfish and disrespectful. I want to honor Dad, maintain family harmony, and protect my boundaries, but I also want to avoid a permanent rift. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée be around my child after she made a comment I found extremely inappropriate. I, 35F, have a 6-year-old daughter, Lily, who I adore and who is the center of my world. I have a younger brother, Ryan, 30M, who has been dating his fiancée, Samantha, 28F, for about 2 years. They just got engaged a couple of months ago, and the wedding planning has been tense, to say the least. Samantha is nice in some ways, but has this habit of making comments that feel condescending or judgmental, especially when it comes to children. For context, Lily is a very sensitive and shy kid. She's been in therapy for mild anxiety since she was 4, and I try to create a calm, structured environment for her. I am extremely protective of her because I want her to feel safe and confident, especially around people she doesn't know well or situations that might overwhelm her. The issue started a few weeks ago. My brother invited me and Lily over for a casual Sunday brunch at their apartment. I was hesitant, but I thought it would be nice to see Ryan and meet some of the family he's been spending time with. As soon as we arrived, Samantha made a comment about Lily. She seems a little too attached to you. Don't you think you're smothering her? I was taken aback, but I tried to laugh it off and change the subject. I told her that Lily does better with consistency and boundaries, and that I like to maintain certain routines that make her comfortable. Samantha rolled her eyes and said, "Well, I just think she should learn to deal with the real world sooner rather than later. Kids are too fragile these days." I tried to ignore it, but I could feel Lily stiffening beside me. The conversation moved on, and we had brunch, but Samantha kept making little comments about Lily's behavior, like how quiet kids are boring, and she should smile more. It's good for social skills. At that point, I quietly said we had to leave because Lily was clearly upset. A few days later, Ryan called me and seemed defensive. He said I was overreacting and that Samantha was just being honest. I tried explaining that her comments were undermining Lily's confidence and could be damaging given her anxiety. But he said, "She's just joking. You're taking it too seriously." I told him that my first responsibility is Lily's emotional safety, and if Samantha couldn't respect that, she couldn't be around her unsupervised. Since then, I have refused to allow Samantha to babysit or be alone with Lily. I also limit visits to short, supervised interactions. This has caused a huge rift with my brother. He says I'm being controlling and that Samantha is family now, so I should get over it. Our conversations often end with him yelling about how I am being unreasonable and how he just wants us all to get along. It escalated last weekend. Ryan invited us to a small family gathering at his place, and I said Lily would only attend if Samantha was not in charge of any activities involving her. Samantha overheard me saying this to my mom on the phone, and she confronted me in front of several family members. She accused me of being paranoid and making Lily hate family because of me. I reminded her that she had made inappropriate comments about my child and that I have the right to protect her. The conversation ended with her storming off and my brother yelling at me for poisoning Lily's mind. Now, the rest of the family is taking sides. Some people say I'm being too strict and need to let the kid learn from everyone, while others say I am justified because Lily's well-being should come first. Ryan refuses to talk to me unless I agree to relax the rules around Samantha, and I feel like I am being forced into a corner. My friends tell me I am right to protect my child, but I am doubting myself because of how hostile this has made family gatherings. I really don't want Lily to be around someone who makes her feel small or anxious, but I also don't want to ruin my relationship with my brother permanently. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée be around my child after the way she has treated her. AITA for refusing to let my younger brother move back in after he caused a huge rift in the family. I, 27M, have always been the responsible one in my family. My younger brother, Mike, 23M, has always had a more free-spirited personality, which has caused friction between him and our parents over the years. I've always tried to mediate and keep the peace, but over time, I realized I can't always be the one smoothing over his messes. A little background. Our parents live out of state, and growing up, we were pretty close. After high school, Mike struggled with jobs and ended up moving in and out of different friends' apartments. He also has a tendency to make big promises he doesn't keep, which has caused tension with friends and family alike. About 3 years ago, he had a major fallout with our parents over money and lifestyle choices and ended up living in another city for a few years. During that time, I didn't interact with him much because he was distant and I had my own life. Fast forward to last year. Mike called me out of the blue, saying he was moving back to our city and needed a place to stay temporarily until he got on his feet. I was hesitant, but I also didn't want to leave him completely stranded. I agreed to let him stay for 1 month, with the understanding that he would actively look for a job and contribute to household expenses. At first, things went okay. He was polite, helped with dishes occasionally, and started sending out a few job applications. But then old patterns resurfaced. He began leaving dirty laundry everywhere, playing video games for hours without contributing financially, and constantly asking me for money for random things. When I reminded him about our agreement, he would get defensive and argue that I didn't understand his struggles. 2 months in, it became unbearable. He started borrowing my car without asking, eating my groceries without replacing them, and even let a friend stay in our apartment for a week without consulting me. I confronted him, and it turned into a huge argument. He accused me of being controlling and unsupportive, while I tried to explain that living together requires mutual respect and boundaries. The situation escalated when he invited some friends over for a small party while I was at work. I came home to a trashed apartment, broken furniture, and noise complaints from neighbors. At that point, I told him he needed to leave immediately. He refused, saying he had nowhere else to go and claiming that I was being cruel by kicking him out. I ended up calling our parents for advice. They sided with me privately, saying that he needed to learn responsibility, but they also expressed concern that he might blame me for pushing him away. Mike's reaction was intense. He started sending me angry texts and social media messages, claiming I was abandoning him and threatening to tell everyone in the family how I treated him unfairly. The real kicker came last week. Mike showed up at my workplace unannounced, demanding to talk. He said I owed him an apology for being cold and that I should help him find a place to live. I explained calmly that I was done enabling his behavior and that he needed to take responsibility for his actions. He yelled at me in front of my co-workers, creating a very uncomfortable situation. My boss was sympathetic, but reminded me that this was now a personal matter that could potentially affect the workplace. After that, I blocked him on all social media and changed my locks. I also told my parents that I would no longer get involved in helping him directly. Since then, my extended family has started taking sides. Some relatives think I'm harsh and that family should help family, while others say I'm justified for setting boundaries and protecting my own life. I understand that my brother is struggling, but I feel like I've done everything I reasonably could. I let him stay, helped him look for jobs, and try to teach him responsibility. At some point, it feels like enabling bad behavior just perpetuates the problem. I've been getting mixed messages. Some friends say I was right to protect my space and mental health, while others think I could have handled it more gently. The whole situation has left me stressed and feeling guilty, even though logically I know I did what I had to do. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my younger brother move back in after he caused repeated problems and refused to take responsibility for his actions. AITA for refusing to let my brother bring his new girlfriend to my wedding even though it caused a huge family fight. I, 27F, am getting married in about 6 months, and my fiancé, 29M, and I have been planning every detail meticulously. My family is fairly close-knit, but we have our quirks, and things can get dramatic if boundaries aren't respected. My brother, Alex, 25M, has always been a bit impulsive when it comes to relationships. He tends to jump into things quickly and often ignores family dynamics when he does. This is relevant because the conflict started when he began dating his new girlfriend, Lena, about 3 months ago. From the very beginning, I had some reservations about Lena. Not because she seemed like a bad person, but because she's extremely attention-seeking and thrives on drama. Alex is head over heels for her, and I can see why. They balance each other in some ways, but every time she's around my family, she tends to stir up tension. She's made snide comments to my parents about everything from their decorating style to their cooking. She openly criticizes my brother in a joking but not really joking way, and she always makes everything about her. A few months ago, when I first sent out save the date notifications, Alex asked if Lena could be included. I hesitated, but didn't outright reject it. I thought maybe he was just excited. Then about a month ago, he came to me and said, I really want Lena to be in the wedding party too. I think it would be fun. At that point, I had to draw a firm line. My fiancé and I had already decided on our bridal party months ago, and there were no extra slots. I tried to explain to Alex gently that our wedding party was already finalized and that adding anyone new would disrupt our plans. He got defensive and told me I was being unfair and picking favorites. Fast forward a few weeks. Lena started inviting herself to our wedding planning events. She crashed a dress-fitting appointment with my mom, and when I politely asked her to leave, she got upset and said, Wow, I can't believe you'd exclude me like this after Alex has told you how much I love your family. My mom tried to smooth things over, but it only made Lena more persistent. At that point, I told Alex directly that Lena would not be attending the wedding at all. I explained that we love him and want him there, but his girlfriend's behavior in the past few months has convinced us that having her at the wedding would create tension and potentially ruin the day for everyone, including him. Alex completely lost it. He accused me of being controlling, of picking favorites, and of ruining his happiness. He told our parents that I was excluding Lena without cause, and suddenly my wedding became the center of a family argument. My parents tried to mediate, saying maybe we could at least let her come as a guest. I explained that we could invite her to the reception only, but not the ceremony, because I want the ceremony to be calm and intimate, and her history of causing drama made that impossible. This led to a huge blow-up at a family dinner. Lena was there. Alex had brought her anyway, without telling me, and she made a big scene, loudly complaining about how unfair I was being and claiming that I was trying to control my brother's life. My dad told Alex he needed to respect the bride's wishes. My mom tried to calm Lena down, and my aunt took Lena's side, saying I should be more accommodating. By the end of the night, there were tears, shouting, and several family members left in frustration. After that incident, I reached out to Alex again and told him I wanted him at the wedding, but if Lena couldn't respect our rules and boundaries, she couldn't come. He said that if Lena couldn't come, he might not come either. I felt crushed because I love my brother, and his presence is really important to me. But I also don't want my wedding day to be overshadowed by arguments, passive-aggressive comments, or Lena's behavior. Since then, my social media and group chats have been full of passive-aggressive comments from both Alex and Lena. She keeps posting subtle digs, and he keeps sending messages like, "I hope you enjoy your perfect day without me," or "Lena, hope it's worth it." My fiancé wants to confront Alex directly, but I don't want to make things worse. I've also spoken to some of my cousins and friends, and the consensus seems to be that I have the right to make decisions about my wedding, but I'm still feeling guilty. I don't want to alienate my brother, and I'm worried that this fight will affect our relationship long term. At the same time, I know that standing firm on boundaries is important, and my wedding day is a once-in-a-lifetime event. My parents are split on the issue, and it's making family gatherings awkward. I've considered compromising by letting Lena come to the reception only, but I'm afraid she'll still cause drama and ruin the mood. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend attend my wedding because of her past behavior and the tension it would likely cause, even though it's causing a huge fight with my family. The situation has escalated to the point where my fiancé and I are considering hiring a mediator or a family counselor just to figure out how to handle Alex and Lena leading up to the wedding. I love my brother, and I don't want to lose him over this, but I also feel like I have to protect the peace of my wedding day. AITA for refusing to host my cousin's wedding after she insulted my house. So, this is going to be long, but I feel like I need to give the full picture. I, 28F, have a cousin, let's call her Emily, 27F, who is getting married next year. Emily and I have always had a somewhat rocky relationship, mostly because she tends to be very critical and dramatic, but we've managed to stay civil. She's the type of person who seems to think everything revolves around her and her feelings. My partner, Sam, 30M, and I live in a fairly new house that we built together about 3 years ago. It's not a mansion by any means, but it's our home, and we're very proud of it. So recently, Emily called me out of the blue and asked if she could host her wedding reception at my house. I was honestly shocked. My house is not very big, and even though we have a decent backyard, it's really only suitable for maybe 30 to 40 people comfortably. Emily and her fiancé, Tom, are planning a guest list of around 150 people. I tried to explain that my house simply couldn't accommodate that many people, but she insisted, saying that it would be cozier and more personal than some random hall. I suggested that maybe she could rent a venue or even host it at her parents' place, but she brushed it off. Then things took a turn. During the conversation, she made a few comments that really rubbed me the wrong way. She said, I guess we could have it there, but your house is so simple. I don't know if it's classy enough for our wedding. I was taken aback. Not only is this incredibly rude, but it felt like she was implying that our hard work on our home is inadequate just because it's not some grand estate. I tried to laugh it off and said, well, it's our home, and we like it, but it's not really designed for 150 people. She responded, yeah, I guess, but if you really cared about me, you'd make it work. It's not like you have anything better to do, right? At this point, I realized that it wasn't about hosting a wedding, it was about control and, honestly, her ego. Sam was standing next to me during the call, and he could tell I was getting frustrated, so he jumped in and reminded her politely that our home simply couldn't accommodate that many people. She sighed dramatically and said, fine, but honestly, it's disappointing. I thought family would support me, but I guess I was wrong. A few days later, she sent me a message asking if we could at least let the bridal party use our house for some pre-wedding photos. I said we might be able to do that, but it would need to be a very small group, and we would need to coordinate timing carefully. She sent back a long, passive-aggressive message about how our house is so plain and boring, and that she doesn't want her wedding photos looking like they were taken in someone's suburban nightmare. That was the last straw. I wrote back a message that was polite but firm. I explained that we love her and want to celebrate her wedding, but our home is private and not suitable for her event. I also told her that her comments about our house were hurtful and that if she couldn't be respectful, we would have to say no entirely. She did not respond. Fast forward a week, and my aunt, her mother, called me. She said Emily had been complaining to the whole family about how I was being selfish and unsupportive. Apparently, she told everyone that I refused to host her wedding because I don't care about her happiness, and she implied that I was trying to humiliate her by saying no. My aunt said she understands why I wouldn't want 150 people in my house, but she also said she feels I could have compromised more. Now, the family drama is escalating. A few cousins have messaged me asking why I'm being so difficult, and Emily herself has sent a text asking if I really hate her for not letting her use our home. I responded that it's not about hate, it's about boundaries. She replied with a long rant about how family should always support each other no matter what, and that she is heartbroken that I would prioritize my house over her wedding. Sam thinks I'm handling it well and that I made the right choice. He said that if we gave in, it would just set a precedent where Emily feels entitled to disrespect our home and our boundaries. I feel guilty sometimes because I know she's emotionally sensitive, but I also feel like it's completely unreasonable for her to expect us to host such a large event in a house that clearly can't handle it, and then insult our home on top of that. So, Reddit, AITA here for refusing to host my cousin's wedding after she insulted my house and kept pushing despite knowing it wasn't feasible. I'm trying to protect my boundaries, but everyone else in the family seems to think I'm the bad guy. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treated my fiancé. So, this is going to be long, but I want to give all the context so people can understand why I made the decision I did. My sister, Melissa, and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, we were close in some ways, but she was always competitive and had a tendency to belittle me when she felt threatened. I learned to let a lot of things slide, but the older we got, the more apparent it became that she never really changed. About 2 years ago, I started dating Ryan, who is amazing. He's kind, funny, smart, and treats me better than anyone ever has. Melissa met him a few months after we started dating, and the first time we all went out together, she made some subtle comments about him that were uncomfortable but easy to shrug off. Over time, though, her behavior escalated. She started making backhanded comments about his job, his hobbies, and even the way he dresses. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking she was just teasing, but it became clear she was being intentionally rude. I tried to defend him politely, and each time she would respond with a joking remark about how sensitive we both are. Fast forward to last year. Melissa got engaged to her fiancé, Tom. They immediately started talking about a big, expensive wedding. She asked me to be a bridesmaid, which I was okay with, but she made it very clear she expected me to spend a lot of money on the dress, shoes, accessories, travel, etc. Normally, I'm fine with helping out, but the way she framed it made it feel more like an obligation than a request. I said yes anyway because I wanted to support my sister. As wedding planning progressed, Ryan and I got some interesting news. Melissa had apparently told the wedding planner and some of her friends that Ryan was inappropriate and doesn't know boundaries, which is absolutely not true. Ryan is polite, respectful, and never oversteps. He confronted me privately, upset and hurt, and I promised I'd talk to Melissa. When I did, she laughed it off and said I was too sensitive and that he should toughen up if he wants to be part of the family. I was furious. At this point, I started noticing patterns. She made snide comments about Ryan when we visited her parents' house. She rolled her eyes when he contributed to conversations, and she even tried to exclude him from group photos. I tried talking to my parents, but they mostly shrugged, saying Melissa has always been blunt, You know how she is. I get that, but this felt different. This was intentional and public. Things came to a head last month. Melissa had a wedding rehearsal dinner, and she insisted Ryan sit at a separate table from the family, claiming there was no room. When he politely asked if he could join the family table, she ignored him. The other bridesmaids, who I thought were friends, told me she had been spreading rumors that Ryan was awkward and self-centered. During dinner, she made a toast that seemed like it was directed at me for being too dramatic about minor things, while completely ignoring Ryan. People whispered and laughed, and Ryan looked humiliated. I left the dinner early because I couldn't stand to watch him being treated like that. After that night, I told Melissa that I was not going to participate in any further wedding events if she continued to treat Ryan this way. I explained that I wasn't willing to put him through public embarrassment just for her sake. Melissa's response was insane. She said I was choosing Ryan over family and being petty, and she implied that I was trying to ruin her special day. She even called our parents and tried to convince them I was being dramatic and selfish. My parents told me to try to compromise, but I explained that I had compromised plenty already and that this wasn't about me wanting my way. It was about protecting someone I love from emotional abuse. Fast forward to today. She officially sent the wedding invitation. She included a note. We really hope you and Ryan can celebrate with us, but if you can't, we understand. It's your choice. On the surface, it seems polite, but it's really condescending given all the backstory. I've decided not to attend, and I wrote her a message explaining why. I told her that I cannot be part of a celebration where Ryan is intentionally humiliated and that unless she genuinely respects him, I will not be there. I also said that while I love her and want her to have a happy wedding, I will not compromise my values or my relationship to attend. Melissa's reaction has been dramatic. She's flooded our family group chat with messages calling me selfish, cruel, and unreasonable. She's texted mutual friends to paint me as the villain, and she even blocked Ryan on social media. My parents are upset with me, saying I'm letting a personal grudge ruin family bonds. I feel like they're missing the point entirely. I am not holding a grudge. I am refusing to subject someone I care about to public humiliation. Ryan supports my decision completely, and honestly, I feel a huge weight lifted by not going. But part of me worries that maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it would have been better to just grin and bear it for one day. I don't want to start a family feud or be seen as dramatic, but at the same time, I refuse to put Ryan through that. So, AITA for deciding not to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treats my fiancé. AITA for refusing to help my brother after he demanded I give up my dream job for him. I, 27F, have been working in graphic design since I graduated college. It's a field I've always loved, and I recently landed a job at a really reputable studio in another city. It's a bit of a move, but it's exactly what I've been working towards for years. My family, especially my parents, were supportive, and I was beyond excited to start this chapter of my life. My younger brother, Jake, 24M, has always been kind of a wild card. He's smart and capable, but he's never been great at planning ahead or taking responsibility. He's held a few jobs here and there, but nothing steady, and he tends to rely on our parents or me whenever he runs into trouble. Lately, he's been struggling to find a decent apartment in our city because rents have gone up and his credit isn't great. A couple of weeks before my move, Jake called me in a panic. He had found a decent place, but he needed someone to co-sign the lease because the landlord wouldn't accept him alone. He was expecting me to just say yes. I tried to explain that I couldn't co-sign. I had just signed some document for my new apartment, and taking on someone else's lease would be financially risky for me. I told him he needed to find another solution. That's when things escalated. He accused me of being selfish and said that I always think about myself first and never help family. He brought up times when he claimed I had refused to help him in the past, which, to be fair, I had, but those were mostly situations where he was asking me to give up something important or put myself in a difficult position. I stood my ground, saying I could help him in other ways, like helping him look for roommates, checking for cheaper apartments, or even giving him advice on how to improve his credit, but I couldn't jeopardize my own stability. He got really angry and started yelling that I was choosing a job over my own brother, and that I didn't care about family. A few days later, I moved to the new city and started my job. Things were going well, and I was finally feeling like I was on track with my life. Then I got a call from my parents, who were upset. Apparently, Jake had gone to them and said that I had abandoned him and that I didn't care about him. They said I should rethink my priorities and help my brother because family comes first. I tried to explain my side, but they said I was being cold and selfish. Jake eventually found a place with a friend, but the tension between us has been really noticeable. He sends me passive-aggressive messages about how I don't care, and my parents are still a little distant. Honestly, I feel like I did the responsible thing. My career and financial stability are very important to me, and I don't feel like I should have to sacrifice them because my brother was unprepared. However, I can see why my parents and Jake think I could have done more. Maybe I could have been more empathetic or tried harder to find a middle ground. But at the same time, I feel like my brother expects me to fix problems that are ultimately his responsibility. So, AITA for refusing to co-sign my brother's lease and prioritizing my career over him. I'm honestly torn because I love my brother, but I also have worked so hard for my own independence and stability. I don't want to feel guilty for setting boundaries, but the family guilt is strong. Has anyone else been in a similar situation where helping a family member might have put your own life at risk? How do you balance family loyalty with personal responsibility? This version is 400-plus characters, fits Reddit AITA story conventions, and maintains a realistic conflict while being emotionally engaging. If you want, I can also write a second, longer version closer to 7,000 characters with added tension, more family dynamics, and a few unexpected plot twists to make it even more viral story ready. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's destination wedding after she said I was putting money over family. I, 35F, have a sister, Melissa, 32F. Growing up, we were close but also very different. I'm financially cautious and prefer to plan ahead, whereas Melissa is more impulsive, outgoing, and dramatic. Our personalities often clash, but we've always managed to maintain a good relationship. A few months ago, Melissa got engaged and immediately began planning a lavish destination wedding. She booked a luxury resort in the Caribbean, an expensive photographer, a designer dress, and over-the-top decorations. During a phone call, she casually asked if I could help cover some of the wedding expenses, suggesting that close family members were expected to contribute financially. The amount she requested was $3,000, framed as necessary to make the wedding perfect. I was shocked. While I have a stable job, I also have student loans, a mortgage, and other financial responsibilities. Contributing $3,000 would be difficult and could jeopardize my budget. I explained that I couldn't provide that amount, but I offered other ways to help, coordinating travel logistics for family, helping with invitations, assisting with decor projects, researching and booking accommodations, and contributing a smaller, more reasonable sum toward a specific wedding expense. I also suggested helping with DIY decorations and organizing a small welcome event for out-of-town guests. Melissa's reaction was immediate and harsh. She called me selfish and not family-oriented, claiming that if I truly cared about her happiness, I would want her wedding to be perfect regardless of cost. She said that my refusal was a betrayal and that I clearly prioritized my own comfort and money over family. I tried to explain that support can take many forms and that I was offering meaningful help in ways that fit my means, but she refused to acknowledge any of it. Over the next few weeks, she repeatedly brought up my refusal. She sent long, guilt-inducing messages detailing her budget and how every dollar counted. She framed my decision as personal rejection and a moral failure. Social media posts from mutual friends and relatives hinted at my lack of support, which made me feel embarrassed and isolated. Some relatives suggested I should just give the money to avoid family drama, while others agreed that $3,000 is a significant sum and that my offers to help in non-financial ways were substantial. I repeatedly explained that I was willing to help in numerous practical ways, but Melissa insisted that only financial support would be meaningful. She even said that my refusal proved I didn't care about family and that I was putting money over love. About a month before the wedding, Melissa held a planning meeting with her bridal party and family. She openly stated that I had refused to contribute financially, implying that I was unsupportive and selfish. I felt humiliated because I had been actively involved in planning, offering to coordinate travel, manage decorations, and help with logistics, but she refused to acknowledge any of it. When I tried to redirect the conversation to tasks I could handle, she dismissed me, insisting that only financial help counted. I then offered a final compromise. I could contribute a modest sum that would not impact my finances, take charge of planning logistics, coordinate travel and accommodations, and manage DIY decoration projects. Melissa rejected this, saying it was insufficient and accusing me of putting my comfort and money above her happiness. She repeatedly framed my decision as selfish and heartless. Since then, our relationship has been strained. She barely speaks to me except to complain about wedding stress, and some relatives have subtly pressured me to contribute, while others support my decision to set boundaries. I feel frustrated, anxious, and guilty. I genuinely want to celebrate her and contribute to her special day, but I also cannot compromise my financial stability or allow myself to be guilted into giving more than I can afford. I also worry that giving in would set a precedent where Melissa assumes I'll always cover expensive aspects of her life events. I feel like I'm being punished for having reasonable boundaries, yet I don't want to permanently damage my relationship with her. Reddit. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's destination wedding after she said I was putting money over family. I want to support her, but I also need to respect my own financial limits and personal boundaries. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at our house and causing a huge family fight. I, 17F, live with my parents and my older sister, Lisa, 25F. Our family has always been close, but Lisa has a habit of being a bit overbearing, and her relationships often create tension. Recently, she started dating someone named Mark, who she met at work. At first, I didn't think much of it, but things escalated quickly. Mark is 28 and works in sales. He's polite enough when we see him at family dinners, but he has some behaviors that make me uncomfortable. He is extremely nosy, asks personal questions that feel inappropriate, and often criticizes how we do things in our house. For example, he commented that our living room was too messy, even though it was clean, and he gave unsolicited advice about my room, which I take pride in keeping tidy. A few weeks ago, Lisa called my mom and asked if Mark could stay over at our house for a couple of nights because he had a work conference in the city and didn't want to book a hotel. My parents didn't outright say yes, but they didn't say no either. I immediately felt uneasy because we don't usually have guests, especially not for multiple nights. I tried explaining this to my mom, telling her that having Mark here could be uncomfortable for everyone, especially since he's not really a part of the family. She brushed it off and said, "Lisa is an adult, and we trust her judgment." When Lisa told me that Mark would be staying, I told her I didn't want him in the house. I explained that I didn't feel comfortable around him and that having him here would disrupt the household. I tried to be polite, but I was firm. Lisa got defensive and said I was being dramatic, that Mark was perfectly normal, and that I was overreacting. I told her I didn't care if she liked him. I didn't want him in my personal space. The night Mark arrived, I stayed in my room most of the time, trying to avoid conflict. At dinner, he started asking me about my social media, my friends, and even my grades in a way that felt invasive. I politely told him that I didn't want to answer personal questions. He laughed it off, saying I was being too sensitive, and Lisa chimed in, rolling her eyes at me. I felt humiliated because it was clear that they were both dismissing my feelings. Over the next 2 days, it became more stressful. Mark left his stuff around, drank our beverages without asking, and spent hours in the living room while I was trying to study. I finally reached a breaking point and told my mom and dad that I wanted him to leave. I explained calmly that his presence was negatively affecting me and that I didn't feel comfortable in my own home. My dad nodded, but my mom said that I had to learn to get along with people. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I texted Lisa, telling her that if Mark didn't leave, I would have to involve my dad and insist that he go. Lisa freaked out and accused me of being controlling. She said I was trying to ruin her relationship and that I had no right to make demands about her adult choices. That night, We had a huge argument where she yelled at me, calling me selfish and immature. The next day, my parents asked me to explain the situation. I told them exactly what had happened and how Mark's behavior made me uncomfortable. My dad understood and said he would talk to Lisa, but my mom got angry at me, saying I was being unreasonable and that I needed to learn a compromise. I felt like my feelings were being dismissed again. Lisa ended up leaving with Mark before the situation escalated further, but our family dynamic has been strained ever since. My parents haven't really addressed the argument, and Lisa has barely spoken to me. Some of my friends say I was justified in standing my ground, while others say I could have been more accommodating because it was only a couple of nights. I feel like my boundaries were completely ignored, and I shouldn't have to compromise my comfort for someone who isn't really a part of our family yet. On the other hand, I can see why my parents and sister might think I overreacted. I'm torn because I don't want to be seen as the difficult sibling, but I also don't want to feel unsafe or disrespected in my own home. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at our house, and standing my ground even though it caused a major fight. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé live in my house while they sort out their finances. I, 27F, have been renting a small but cozy apartment in a mid-sized city for about 5 years. I live alone, and I'm very particular about my space. I work from home, so I spend a lot of time in the apartment, and I've decorated and organized it exactly the way I like. I also have some pets, 2 cats and a small dog, that I consider family. My younger sister, Lily, 24F, recently got engaged to her boyfriend, Jason, 26M. I met him a few times over the past couple of years and thought he was fine. Nothing remarkable, but polite. I wasn't super close with Lily growing up. We drifted apart in high school, but reconnected a few years ago. A few weeks ago, Lily called me in a panic. She explained that she and Jason were having financial issues. Jason's job is part-time and irregular, and he's been trying to save money for a down payment on a place. Lily's job pays decently, but they've been struggling to pay rent together. Her idea, she said, was for Jason to move in with me temporarily. Just for a month or 2, she said, until we get back on our feet. You have extra space, and we'll pay you rent. I was immediately uncomfortable. I live alone, and while my apartment isn't huge, it isn't tiny either. The thought of adding another adult, especially someone I don't really know well, into my space for an indefinite period made me anxious. I also thought about my pets. Jason is not particularly good with animals and has allergies to cats. I told Lily I wasn't comfortable with the idea, and I suggested they look into short-term sublets or staying with his parents. She seemed upset, but dropped it at least for a few days. Then last week, she called me again, this time saying that Jason's part-time job just cut his hours further and that they really need somewhere safe and quiet to stay for a few weeks. She said she could pay me $500 a month. My rent is $1,200, so technically I would be making extra money, but the idea of having someone living with me, taking over my space, and potentially causing conflicts with my pets and schedule stressed me out. I reiterated that I couldn't do it, but Lily got defensive. She said, "You always put your comfort over family. I thought you'd understand. You're my sister. Don't you want to help us?" I stayed firm. I explained that my apartment isn't really set up for 2 more people, and my pets don't adjust well to strangers. I also mentioned that since I work from home, having someone else around could make it really hard for me to concentrate. I said I'm happy to help in other ways, like lending them some money, helping them look for a short-term rental, or even letting them store some stuff in my apartment. But living here is off the table. Lily started crying on the phone and accused me of being selfish. She said Jason would sleep on the couch, and that $500 a month was better than nothing. I told her again I wasn't comfortable, and she hung up. Later that night, I got a group text from my parents. Apparently, Lily told them I refused to help and painted me as heartless for prioritizing my comfort over family. My parents didn't outright scold me, but they asked me to reconsider for the sake of our engagement and financial stability. I haven't responded. I've noticed that my friends have mixed reactions. A few think I'm being unreasonable because it's just for a few weeks, while others say that it's perfectly fine to have boundaries and that I shouldn't feel guilty for wanting to maintain my space. The thing is, I do want to help my sister, but I don't think it has to be by letting her fiancé live in my apartment. I'm offering financial assistance, helping them look for rentals, and even watching their pets for a weekend if they need, but living arrangements feel like a hard boundary for me. I'm starting to feel guilty because I can tell this has really hurt Lily, and I don't want our relationship to deteriorate. But at the same time, I feel like being forced to compromise my personal space is unfair. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé live in my apartment while they get back on their feet financially. Character count, 6, 500-word count. 1, 150 if you want. I can also write another one even longer with more drama and family conflict, which tend to make stories go viral on Reddit. That one could push closer to 7,000 characters. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter choose her own birthday gift after she demanded something I thought was inappropriate. I, 36F, have been married to my husband, Tom, 40M, for 6 years. He has a daughter from a previous relationship, Lily, who is 15. Tom and I have a generally good relationship, and I try to be a positive presence in Lily's life, but I admit that sometimes I struggle with boundaries because she can be manipulative, though I try not to let that influence my behavior. Lily's birthday was last week, and I wanted to do something special for her. Usually, Tom and I buy her a joint gift together, but this year I suggested that she pick out something herself, thinking it would make her feel more involved and excited. I assumed she would choose something reasonable within the budget we had set, which was around $150. When we sat down to discuss what she wanted, Lily immediately asked for a high-end laptop that cost almost $2,000. I was shocked. I explained to her that this was far above the budget we had discussed and that it wasn't reasonable for a birthday gift, especially since we were already buying her a few other things she had mentioned over the last couple of months. She became visibly upset and said that we were being unfair and that we never let her have the things she really wants. I tried to reason with her. I told her that she already has a working laptop that is perfect for school and hobbies, and that asking for a new one that expensive seemed excessive. I offered alternatives like a smaller tablet, some tech accessories, or saving her money for something she could really enjoy. She immediately started crying and accusing me of hating her and trying to control her life. Tom, surprisingly, stayed quiet at first, though I could tell he was uncomfortable. After about 10 minutes of back and forth, I said firmly that the $2,000 laptop was not happening for her birthday. She screamed and stormed out of the room. Tom followed her to calm her down, and I went to the living room to finish wrapping the other gifts she would be receiving. Later that evening, Tom confronted me. He said I had ruined Lily's birthday and that I was being unnecessarily strict. He argued that she's a teenager and it's normal for her to want expensive things, and that I should have just let her pick the gift. I told him I wasn't going to spend thousands on a single item when there were reasonable alternatives that still made her happy. The conversation got heated, and we ended up arguing for a couple of hours about parenting, finances, and boundaries. The next day, Lily barely spoke to me. She was polite but distant, and she made it clear she was still upset. Tom also seemed frustrated and hinted that I was too controlling and that maybe I didn't really care about making her happy. I tried to explain that caring doesn't mean giving in to every demand, but he didn't seem convinced. The situation has now reached a point where family dinners are tense. Lily has been sulking in her room and making passive-aggressive comments about how she doesn't need anyone to get what she wants. Tom has been distant and sighs a lot when I bring up any family plans. My friends are divided. Some say I handled it appropriately and that setting boundaries is important, while others think I overreacted and should have let her pick the gift to avoid drama. I feel torn because I genuinely want Lily to feel loved and celebrated, but I also don't want to set a precedent where money dictates affection or where she expects to get whatever she wants by acting upset. I've tried talking to her calmly, explaining my reasoning, and even suggesting ways she could earn part of a more expensive gift through chores or saving up, but she refuses to listen and insists that a birthday should be magical and that I'm ruining it. I also worry about the long-term consequences. I want Lily to learn that life doesn't always hand you everything you want, but I don't want her to feel alienated from me or resentful of her stepmother. Tom has suggested that maybe I'm too rigid and that I need to loosen up if I want to have a good relationship with Lily, which makes me feel like I'm being forced to compromise my principles just to keep the peace. I considered talking to a family counselor, but I'm also concerned that Tom might not take it seriously or that Lily would refuse to participate. I don't want to escalate the conflict further, but at the same time, I feel like I need to stand my ground on this because I genuinely believe she doesn't need a $2,000 laptop for her birthday. So, AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter pick an extremely expensive gift for her birthday and tried to encourage her to consider alternatives instead. AITA for refusing to let my brother live in my apartment after he demanded it during his financial crisis. I-36F have a younger brother, Ryan, 31M. Growing up, we were close at times, but Ryan has always been impulsive, dramatic, and prone to relying on others when things go wrong. I've always been more financially stable and careful with my life choices, which has occasionally caused tension between us. A few months ago, Ryan called me in a panic. He and his fiancée, Claire, 30F, had unexpectedly lost their apartment due to a sudden eviction. They'd been behind on rent for months, and he claimed the landlord was unreasonable. Almost immediately, Ryan asked if they could move into my apartment temporarily while they figured things out. My apartment is a 2-bedroom, and I live alone. I work full-time, have bills, and maintain routines that are important to my mental health. Hosting them indefinitely would be disruptive and stressful. I told them I couldn't let them move in permanently, but I offered alternatives. I could help them find a short-term rental, contribute a portion of the cost, help move their things, and even let them store some belongings in my apartment. I made it clear that I was willing to help, just not at the cost of my personal space and routines. Ryan's response was furious. He accused me of being selfish, ungrateful, and not family-oriented. Claire also called, crying, saying that it was heartless to refuse them and that families should always support each other in times of need. Ryan argued that since I had a stable job in my own place, it was my responsibility to take them in. I tried to explain that helping doesn't always mean giving up one's home or comfort, and that my offers were genuine forms of support, but he refused to acknowledge any alternative. Over the next week, the pressure increased. Ryan sent long, guilt-inducing texts every day, detailing how stressful the situation was and emphasizing that I was the only person who could help. Claire also called repeatedly, sometimes crying, sometimes yelling, insisting that I do the right thing and let them move in. Mutual friends and other relatives began weighing in, some saying I should let them stay to avoid conflict, others supporting my boundaries. I felt cornered and extremely stressed. Things escalated when they showed up at my apartment unannounced. Ryan said they had nowhere else to go and assumed I would change my mind. I calmly told them the answer was no and that showing up without notice was inappropriate. Claire started yelling and crying, accusing me of ruining their lives and calling me selfish. Ryan mostly stayed quiet but looked frustrated and angry. I reiterated that I was willing to help them find temporary housing, contribute to costs, and assist with moving logistics, but they insisted that only staying at my apartment would solve their problems. I then tried one final compromise. I would pay for a short-term rental for them, help them move their belongings, and help coordinate their schedule for the next couple of months. I made it clear that my apartment was off-limits. They refused, saying that this was insufficient, and framed my refusal as me prioritizing comfort and money over family. Ryan even said that by not letting them move in, I was breaking family bonds and being disloyal. Since then, our relationship has become extremely strained. Ryan barely talks to me except to complain or guilt-trip me about the situation. Claire posts vague social media updates implying that some family members don't step up when it counts. Other relatives have been divided. Some insist I should just give in to avoid conflict, while others say my boundaries are reasonable. I feel frustrated, guilty, and anxious. I genuinely want to help my brother and his fiancée, but I cannot compromise my home, routine, or mental health for an indefinite period. I also worry that giving in would set a precedent, where Ryan assumes he could demand my space whenever convenient. I feel like I'm being punished for having reasonable boundaries, yet I don't want to permanently damage my relationship with him. Reddit. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée move in after they demanded it during their financial crisis. I want to support them, but I also need to protect my boundaries, home, and mental well-being. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house after she insulted my home. I, 28F, have always been very proud of my home. I live in a modest but very cozy apartment in a city I love. I've worked hard to make it feel welcoming and comfortable. I honestly enjoy having friends and family over. I have a good sense of what works in a small space, and I spend a lot of time decorating and keeping it tidy. My younger sister, Jenna, 25F, recently got engaged. She and her fiancé, Mark, 26M, have been together for about 3 years, and they've started planning their wedding. The thing is, Jenna has always been very judgmental when it comes to appearances and wealth. She tends to be a bit materialistic and sometimes makes snide remarks about things I value, even if she can't articulate why. My parents have never called her out on it, which has been frustrating for me. A few weeks ago, she invited me to lunch to talk about the wedding. I assumed she just wanted advice or help, since I have some experience planning events for friends and family. Instead, she casually said, "So, we're thinking about hosting the wedding at your apartment. It's so quaint, and you have great taste, but it's so small, and I'm not sure it would impress anyone." I was stunned. I paused for a moment and tried to process what she just said. I asked her, "Are you seriously asking me to host your wedding here? It's an apartment, not a venue, and it's not really equipped for that kind of thing." She replied, "Well, I mean, it's cozy, and I know you'd love to help, but honestly, it feels a bit cramped. And, I wanted to feel more upscale." I didn't say anything immediately because I wanted to keep calm, but inside, I was furious. First of all, she just insulted my home. Second, she's asking me to shoulder the responsibility of hosting a massive event in a space that literally can't hold more than 20 people comfortably. I explained all of this. I told her the apartment couldn't handle the guest list she wants, there's no proper catering space, and she'd be putting everyone in danger by trying to cram that many people into a small apartment. Instead of listening, she laughed nervously and said, "I just thought it'd be cute. I mean, it's your space, so maybe it could work if you redecorated everything. You love decorating anyway, right?" I couldn't believe it. She was suggesting that I completely redo my apartment for her wedding, which was still going to be cramped and awkward, just so she could have a cute location. I told her firmly that I would not host the wedding in my home. I also mentioned that if she wanted me involved, I would happily help in planning, organizing, or even hosting pre-wedding events like showers or brunches at my place. But the wedding itself was out of the question. She got really defensive and started saying that I was being selfish, that families should support each other, and that I was overreacting. She even said, "I guess I just assumed you'd want to help me because we're sisters." But maybe I was wrong about that. I felt like she was completely ignoring the fact that her request was unreasonable. My parents got involved after I told them what happened. They said I should just try to make it work and that I was being dramatic. My father mentioned that my apartment could feel charming for a wedding if I just tried harder. I felt like no one was really on my side. Since then, I've been trying to set boundaries without causing a family feud. I offered to help with decorations, planning, and even logistics for another venue, but Jenna keeps bringing up the idea of making it work at your place whenever we talk. Last week, she texted me a photo of her Pinterest board with my apartment photos superimposed with flower arrangements, tables, and a tiny dance floor. The caption was, "See, it could totally work." I didn't respond. Some of my friends think I'm right to refuse because her request is unreasonable and insulting. Others say I should compromise for family. But I honestly feel like hosting the wedding in my apartment would be a nightmare and would only make her feel like she's doing me a favor while still finding ways to critique everything. I don't want to damage my relationship with Jenna, but I also feel like I'm being completely reasonable. I've offered support and compromise in many other ways, but she seems to think that my home should just be at her disposal, despite her clear lack of respect for it. So, Reddit. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my apartment after she insulted my home and tried to pressure me into it. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.